Rich Shea here, unboxing Apiary, a game designed by Connie Vogelmann, published by Stonemaier, with an Automata Factory solitaire mode. 1 to 5 players. I played it at a convention. I really liked it. Despite the weird theme, bees in space, the game's a lot of fun. It comes with a teaching guide, 2 sides, which is good. In fact, it's probably a good way to go over it. Players get a faction, the hive mat, a docking mat, and 3 player tokens, 7 hibernation markers, and some workers. So you start with the unupgraded version outside of your hive, and you might upgrade it during the game. You put, on your turn, you're going to take one of your workers, put it on the board in the leftmost or topmost space of an action space, and even if there's somebody there, you do that. You just bump them off the space, which is actually good for them in most cases. Or you can retrieve all your workers if somehow you've managed to get them all out there and nobody's bumped them to help you out. When you place them, you bump workers that are already there, and it's rather obvious. They might move to another space on that action area, and when something gets, which might bump something else, and when they get bumped off the end, they return to the owner, but they get upgraded a level. Okay, so, but if the returned worker has a strength of 4, they have to hibernate instead, which is the ultimate upgrade. And once enough bees have hibernated, that will actually trigger the end game. So, if you retrieve all your workers, you take them all off the board and put them in the landing area of your player mat, and they also go up in strength, unless they're strength 4, in which case they have to hibernate. So, also, you get to collect resources if you've set up your hive correctly when you retrieve the workers. Otherwise, you get resources in other ways during the game. Strength 4 workers are removed from the game. They go to a hibernation spot, which will generally get you some kind of small bonus, but there are 3 hibernation areas, and there's an area majority bonus at the end of the game for each of the areas. Okay, you'll be putting tiles on your hive, farms to get and store resources, recruits to give you special abilities, not bees that you put in play, but as if they were bees that you recruited with special capabilities. Developments get you powerful one-time bonuses, and there's only a certain tiles that you can select from at each time. And the strength of your worker determines how many tiles you get to select from. Carvings are special end-game bonus point things that you put in your hive, and sort of memorial point things, not resource generators, but points is how you win the game. The actions that are available are explore. There's an area of planets to explore or visit to get resources. Okay, the first person to explore a planet gets an explore token, which is a little bonus. And also many of the planets, you can decide what resources they produce. Each time it's visited, the player creates or selects the kind of resource that the planet will make in the future. That's if there's an empty resource spot. And there's for many planets, a strength 4 worker gets you another kind of extra bonus. Grow is how you get more workers or replace the workers that have gone into hibernation. You can only have 4 at a time. And it's also how you add frames, which are more spaces to your hive. Okay, and the upgrade is also triggered there. If you put a strength 4 worker on the grow space, you may flip your faction tile to the upgraded side. Carve is only strength 4 workers can get you a point producing monument kind of tile onto your hive. Convert lets you move resources from one kind to another. When you send a strength 4 worker there, you can basically invent what's called a dance, which is a conversion equation. Once you create it, you can use it, but so can everybody else. But when they use it, you get a bonus from doing that. Research is you draw cards, and the cards have multiple values. They can be played at the beginning or the end of your turn for an instant effect or to count as a basic resource. They can be planted for endgame points. Right, with strength 4 workers, and Advance is buying tiles to add to your hive. The Queen's Favor track has certain actions that result in you moving up on that track, and there are endgame victory points depending on how far up the track you go. When the hibernation comb is full, or one player hibernates their last worker, each player takes one more turn, including the player who completed it. Then the game ends with scoring. So you can see some of the colorful features here. I don't think I want to go over gameplay as much as I would in other games. There are a lot of details, but they're all very logical. There's a lot going on in this game. It sounds a little overwhelming, but each of the steps is actually quite simple to understand. When you place a worker on a space, it will bump any other worker, just follow the arrow, and if there's one there, that means that they bump off. When there's a second space, what actually happens is it augments the strength of the bee that's placed there with the value of the bee or the +1 if it's not empty, so that the combined strength is what's used. So putting advanced bees on spaces like this will help another player in the future, but it'll help you out by bumping your bee along. And you can see that a 4-strength bee, in this case, also gains 3 victory points immediately. So the strength of the worker determines the strength of the activity. Strength 4 workers go immediately to being hibernated. You don't get a replacement worker. You have to go out and use the action that gets you a replacement worker. Okay, so there's exploring the planets. We'll see it, the mothership, which moves around on here orthogonally. The number of points, the number of spaces up to the strength of the worker that you placed, and then you do the action on the planet that you move to. Advances can get you production and storage on your hive, special workers like the agriculturalist, a one-time ability, and usually some victory points at the end of the game. They cost resources. The resource costs are on the tiles, and the strength that you use, 2, which would be a 1-strength worker +1 here, or 3 if you get to choose between these two, or 5 for the combined strength. You get to choose from all 3, and there's immediate replacement. So, and there's a lot of different tiles. Grow lets you get a 1-strength worker for pollen, and for 2 strength you can add a frame. So if you put 3 strength, you can get 1 worker and then do that, get the frame. If you place a 4 worker, you can do these 2 things if you have the resources, and also upgrade your faction tile. Okay. Research lets you get cards, and the cards you get 1 card, you draw 1 card for each strength that you have in there, but you only keep 1 card. Okay, if you use a strength 4 worker, you also get to take one of the cards in your hand and tuck it under your board for endgame bonuses. We'll look at some of the cards later. It's easy to see. Convert lets you convert resources. The number of conversion actions that you can perform is equal to the strength of the bee that you place there, and the strength 4 worker can create a new dance of their own design by placing tokens that are available. There's a limited number of dances that can be made, and each token for making a dance can only be used once. But then the dance is available. The player who created it can use it, and other players can use it too. Okay, carving gets you these, requires a 4-strength worker and gets you endgame points. Resources in the game are fiber, pollen, water, those are basic, and wax and honey. Those are ones you are harder to get. Sometimes you can get them directly, but usually you have to get them through conversion. Okay. Resources have limited storage abilities depending on how your hive is configured. The green tiles will increase your storage capabilities, as well as having the potential for harvesting items. So the tile types are, there's faction tiles, recruits, providing ongoing abilities, developments, providing one-time benefits, and usually some points. And they're paid for with wax. Carvings paid for with honey. Farms and recruits are paid for with fiber or pollen in different combinations, or maybe water. No, yes, a fiber and a water will get you this. It'll store any basic good and a honey or a wax. And if you get to use it for harvest action when you retrieve your workers, you'd get a water. The Queen's favorite icon lets you move up that track. At the end of the game, which I already told you how that was triggered, you score points for explore token bonuses, farm income, hibernation combs, building bonus. So there's a lot of points. It's a point salad at the end of the game kind of thing. And that's the game. There's a number of symbols, but the symbology is not very difficult to understand. It's pretty straightforward, I think. The toughest one is and anytime, whenever you need anytime action, that's that income during the income phase, increase a worker's strength by 1, and instant, recruit, and farm. That's development, recruit, and farm. It's got the typical instant action on things. Honey, wax, honey or wax. Pollen or fiber versus fiber or pollen. The appendix covers things that might lead to questions. So all of the tiles that you can pick up are explained. The cards are explained. And there's an automata. There's a lot of cardboard. It's of a medium thickness. This is a player's docking mat. Those are their active bees. Those are retrieved bees. Okay, and when a bee gets bumped back, it's usually going to go to the active pool, but sometimes they end up here. Okay, in the landing area. Okay, so hibernation tokens go there. Exploration tokens you gather might go there. There's I think that might be an automata dance. So, or maybe that's one of the dances you can choose. These are planets. As you can see, a planet, these planets have blank spaces. The first person to arrive at the planet will choose one resource that it makes. If there's multiple spaces like this, the second person to arrive will get the first resource and also pick another resource that they get. From then on, that planet will provide those two resources for anybody who arrives there. Not all the planets, but some planets have a bonus. If you use a 4, you get the resource, but then in this case you would get a 1 value worker, if you have one available, and plant a card. These are fairly powerful bonuses when you use a 4 to explore, but then they're gone. Here's these are some of the carvings. This one is gain 14 points if you have no frames in your colony, and it costs 2 honey to acquire it. It takes up a space. So they all have special rules, 2 per active bee you have at the end of the game, 3 per adjacent tile, including faction tiles, to the carving when you place it, 4 per planted card. So they're very powerful endgame bonuses, but they also will determine a strategy you use. That's one of the very interesting things about the game. Oh, there's more potential dances, right? Yes. And more planets, docking mats and planets. Over here is, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7 of each of these colors, the bees that are in hibernation. These are more of the carvings. These are the one-time things. They cost wax. Plant up to 2 cards, a very powerful action, but 0 victory points, and you can see it's marked with the instant thing. Some of them, this is less powerful. Take 3 face-up tiles and add them to your reserve. Only you can build them. So that's nice, but not super powerful. But it's 4 points at the end of the game. So the less powerful ones tend to have more points. These are tokens you can use to build a dance. In this particular case, let's say that you want to build the dance for a victory point and a wax and a bump on the queen's bonus. You would maybe take a pollen and a victory point here, and that would turn into those things. That's kind of a silly dance, but that's a doable thing. Then there's more of the instant effects. You can see there's a lot. And fiber and water, the rest of the hibernation tiles. Fiber and water for making dances. Queen's favor for making dances. These are the exploration tokens that go face down on each planet that hasn't been explored yet and is taken by the first player to explore them. This is get a card. This is get a pollen, get a queen's favor. These are I can't remember the name now, but they show the initial setup. For the Anna, at the end game, you get 2 points per that kind of tile adjacent to this tile. So 1, 2, 3, 4 potentially. And you start with a 2, a 1, and a 1, which is the typical starting. You would start with a water, and then you have this much storage, and a pollen or a fiber, and that much storage for those. So the powers are asymmetric. For instance, adjacent to this tile, slightly different. Actually, it's the same. I think this is kind of the default start. That's the default start there. Most of the endgame bonuses are kind of thing adjacent. And if you see, this is the base side. It's 2 points per. When you flip it over to the other side, you see it just becomes, can you see that? Yeah. 3 points per. That's typical for the upgraded thing. And you can see on the back that you can't see which tile's coming up. And then there's more of that. There's 20 different ones of these. This one, you can see, is somewhat different. Whenever you hibernate, you get 2 points or a wax, but your starting workers, you only get 2 of them, and they're both 2s. So instead of 2, 1, 1, you have 2, 2. So you have fewer moves before you have to do something, but both the moves are more powerful than with a 1. But you're probably going to want to get yourself some workers soon. Okay. And this goes on for a while. Now here you'll see the specialist. This is the agriculturalist. It's worth a point at the end of the game. When you retrieve, you collect an additional harvest item. Costs 2 pollen to get. This one is whenever you build a farm adjacent to this, you get a victory point, but it doesn't have any victory points to start with. Not super powerful, but not expensive. And then here's like Carpa, which is very different. When they're focused on quantity over quality, there's no special ability. They do, however, have more start with more resources, and they start with all 4 bees, but at level 1. So quantity. It's not clear to me that all these things are like balanced, but they are all different and exciting. And there are, in my opinion, a lot of strategy paths. So artisan, cartographer, there's a lot of these, and they're all very variable. There's a lot of decisions to be made. And these are the initial hives. There's not that many. One of the things they all have in common, if you fill up the initial thing, you get 8 points. Okay, your faction starting tiles go here. And there are bonuses when you build, or in this case, discounts. This one has discounts for building certain kinds of tiles in those spaces. Whereas this, the log, you get some serious bonuses when you build on those things, but you have to pay the full cost. And you can see on the bottom, the seed cards go here. At the beginning of the game, you can only have 2, but each time you add a frame, it unlocks the ability to add 1 more of the endpoint gathering tiles to the bottom. So there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 initial hives. but then they have their 20 faction tiles. So as you can see, there's a lot of different things may end up happening. This is a piece of cardboard. Okay. Here's the board itself, which is probably too big to put on camera all at once. As you can see, it's pretty large. The bees go here, the planets go here, the queen ship will go here at the beginning of the game. Okay, here's the advance, the tiles go here, the conversion and carvings go here. You see where the 3 generated dances will be added. Here's the hibernation combs. Every empty spot is available when you hibernate, but you will care about the bonuses for placing on the hibernation spots. Over here, these are more valuable resources you get. Wax is even 1 honey spot, but it's 7 and 2 points for majorities. This gives you things you want early in the game, basic resources. This gives you things that are harder to take advantage of. These two, there's victory points, but it also just rotates some of the tiles. But there's more points for majority and more points for second and majority. Research, that's where you get the cards. Queen's favorite track is along the bottom here. The point track goes around the edges there. Okay, and there's grow. Okay, do that way. The point track, Queen's favorite track. Research for plants, for cards. Growing, so getting more bees, or getting frames, or upgrading your faction. So the board is actually, if I remember correctly, double-sided depending on the number of players. The smaller number of players has fewer dances, fewer carvings available. The advance only has 1 set of spaces for all 3 tiles, whereas on the 4 and 5 player version, there are 2 separate, one's for farm and a separate one for recruit and development. So they make that adjustment based on the number of players. Each player gets a card that helps with what things are, and turn indicator, turn rules. You can see there's an insert that holds a bunch of things. There are lots of cute pieces. That's wax, pollen, honey, Pooh would love that, fiber, water, pollen, player color markers. I don't think I'm going to haul them out because you've all seen wooden bits before. These are the frames. They're all identical. You get a card when you build on these spaces, and if you fill the frame, it's worth 8 points at the end of the game. And you can have as many as you want, but frankly, 2 is probably as many as you're going to want to get in a game. There's some extra bags. These are the bees. You can see they're like, they have little bee faces and value, and then they go up, in value, 2, 3, and then 4, and then off the board to hibernation. So you reuse this token and use the cardboard to indicate the hibernated ones. They're nice. They're easy to read because they have they've been filled a little bit, which is a nice touch actually. It makes them less gamey, more modelly in a way. And we also have, I guess I got to dump them out here, the mothership, which is this giant bee thing. If you look online, you'll see that some people have realistically painted theirs. And it comes with a stand and a stick, so it stands up and you move it over the explore section of the board. And the last thing is the very large deck of cards, some of which are the play deck, and I think some of them are the automata deck. So this is the other deck, and that's the automata deck, I believe. I'm not sure how that works, and we're probably not going to go into it. So each of the cards has, it can use it as and it's any basic resource. You can play this pretty much anytime between actions. Gain the resources shown on any explored planet and then discard the card if you do either of those two things. Or if you get the chance, you can tuck it under for the end game. In this case, get 3 victory points per frame with a maximum of 12. So 4 frames will get you 12 points, which is a lot. Many of these have limits, whereas this one is the exact opposite endgame, 7 points if you don't have any frames. Seems like a hard way to live, but you just fill up your other thing. And many of the cards are very powerful. Teach a dance, and if you haven't yet taught a dance, then you may use its conversion once. It's a very powerful capability. Plus or minus strength of 1 to one of your bees, okay, or an extra 5 if your hive mat is full. So the cards are very powerful capabilities. The first time I played, I basically just went all in on cards as opposed to carvings and won the game. But the people who went doing well with carvings were very close behind me. It was not like it was like a better strategy. It just worked out for me. I had a card-heavy capability, and it made sense to use it. Well, that's the game. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting it to the table again really soon. It's a very strange theme, but it's a very nicely produced and, in my opinion, executed game with lots of interesting decisions. I think it has a very big strategic space, which is hard to do. It's gigantic, a little expensive. It's like a Stonemaier game, but I like it pretty much. And I hope that's enough information for you to decide if it's the kind of game you want to explore. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you again sometime soon, I hope.